For someone whose entire career has been focused on joy, why a podcast on pain? Because these stories need to be told. A good phoenix rising out of the ashes story reminds us all that not only can we survive, we can thrive. And when we emerge, we're different. That's the alchemy of pain. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Alchemy of Pain podcast. I get to talk to such interesting people of depth, because you can't have gone through painful stuff without having become richer and more beautiful in the process. My guest today is no exception. I saw her name as part of a coaching group I belong to, and I thought, what a cool name, Courtney Starheart. She is the founder of the Church of the Natural Law, and you'll find out what that is, as well as you will find out what finding the force, that beautiful light behind her, means. Courtney, welcome to the podcast.
It is a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yours is a story that needs to be told. Before we get into how you serve in the world today, I want people to know your creds. You are one of the most highly educated people I've ever had the privilege of meeting. And I want people to understand your educational background before we get into your service. Tell us the broad brush view.
Wow. Thank you so much for highlighting that first, because I notice with my sisters in the world, sometimes the assumption is that we're maybe not educated or not smart or not competent. And you're my favorite woman because you always make sure to highlight, the great things about other people who serve. And we need that. We need that support from each other. Um, I'm a National Merit Scholar. So that means that when I was taking my SATs in high school, I went to the same high school as President Biden. Whether you like him or not, it is completely irrelevant. And I won't disclose my personal opinion either. But I did go to the same Ivy League feeder school. It was a Norbertine school, kind of like the Jesuits. They're very rigorous about math and science and education, as well as the arts you know so I got a world-class education in high school, and then thanks to that education, thank you Archmere Academy. I just want to shout them out. It's an amazing school. I got a National Merit Scholarship, and I was able to go to American University in Washington, D.C., and do 2 degrees in 4 years. They were so generous. Some scholarships are limiting, and I felt like a kid in a candy store when I walked in to register for my classes, and she said, "Take as many as you want." I was like, "What?" And she was like, "Yeah, I mean, you could probably get a master's or partway into a PhD done within your 4-year unlimited educational package." I did it. I did it. I actually did 2 degrees in 4 years, one in Spanish, which was thrilling, and one in English, again, thrilling. International relations. It was mostly about politics, econ, how the world moves. So understanding international finance, accounting, business. It's kind of like a pre-MBA. And then I got to meet people from all over the world. I'm half Native American, and so in my family we're very diverse. You have people who are darker skinned than some of my black friends, right? And you have some people who are like albino white, um, and we're just so diverse, and I enjoy that diversity. I got to meet people from the countries of origin all over Africa and Asia and Europe and South America. Some of my teachers were actually teaching people at the UN and educating Supreme Court justices on constitutional law. Can you imagine?
So, for a person who is curious and engaged and brilliant, I view you as all of those things. You had this tremendous educational foundation. Were you always tapped into the Native American side of your culture?
It was. Um, My mother was one of the generation of ladies who was liberated from being forced to be at home economically, kind of tied to the kitchen stove and the children. And I was a stay-at-home mom, and I've wrapped my entire life around being a mom. So I understand how important that role is. But my mom got to be the other thing that I like, which is an educated, liberal, professional woman. But it meant she wasn't home a lot. So during the summers, I got to spend the summers with my grandparents. My Native American grandmother was just a wonderful human being. Um, Her family was from the Southwest, uh, and her last name, her maiden name, was Vasquez. So there are a lot of Spanish speakers in the family, a lot of Native Americans. Was I always in touch with it? I mean, my uncles were powwow dancers, so that was part of the family lore. I was
But the
always on a quest.
spirituality
Yeah,
was,
that's what I
was
was going to say.
yeah, were you engaged with that?
I was always on a spiritual quest. I think that's kind of the question, right? Where you always looking for the force or looking for some deeper mystery to life. 100%.
So this podcast is about how a painful experience in life often changes you forever, changes the trajectory of your life, helps you find your purpose, find the force in some cases. Can you share your painful experience that changed the trajectory of your life?
Um, Thank you for asking. As a person who serves a community of people who, like 90 to 100% of them, have PTSD, as a minister, I find that I'm often the only person in the room who feels kind of good about asking people, "Hey, are you okay? How are things going? How are you doing post pandemic? How's your heart?" You know? And oftentimes I'm the person who's sitting with a group of people for hours and we're all exchanging these stories and invariably crying and laughing. But it's important to thank you. Um, I had two beautiful children. I was about 30 years old and I had E. coli poisoning in our well in our house in the upstate New York area. Just gorgeous. I mean, the rolling hills and the old mountains and the black dirt, a river running through our backyard and pear trees. And I love to garden. So having a home for me is so important because you plant things and you become attached to your little bulbs and your little trees and birds. And um, yeah, I've ended up losing my home in the mortgage crisis and essentially being homeless with my children. And in addition, had E. coli poisoning. Um,
Oh, that's a tsunami of events that would
right.
break most people. E. coli, how did it present in your body? What were you facing physically?
It was just horrible. It was the most disgusting thing you could possibly imagine. I mean, I don't want to be like vulgar, but E. coli essentially is fecal matter, a bacteria that eats your body from the inside out. So I was chasing infections all over my body, urinating blood, throwing up blood, standing up in the morning instead of, having a heavy period, dropping something like a liter of blood on the ground because my internal organs were melting. And my children were also sick. And nobody could figure out what was going on. Eventually, it got into the mastoid bone, into the tissue of my brain. And then that was probably the closest swipe at death. Um, and as I was going through that process, it was just that I loved my children so much. And I loved life so much. It's weird how getting close to death, kind of like that ayahuasca or near death experience, there's people who come back from the other side and they love life so much. If you're able to open your eyes and open your heart and not be terrified that you're going to lose this precious gift, it's the opportunity to just completely fall in love with life. And that again is like how you find the force, really, by opening your heart and saying, "Oh, wow, I have to stay alive. I love my children. I love this land." I was having I was having ongoing kind of hallucinations. Um, we call it a prophetic dream in Native American culture. I was going to the dream time and the spirits were helping me. And I had a recurring dream of an eco village where we had created the seed culture for a new world. And I had a daughter on the other side still, right? When this all started, and she became my guide.
Okay, you were near death. Some might call these prophetic dreams just the delusions of a sickness, and yet they were guiding you somewhere. And the evidence is clear because you are living much of what you dreamed. How did you get better physically?
Oh, yeah, that part. That was where I had to learn about the mind body connection. I ended up having, again, these prophetic dreams. And in this dream, I kept on seeing my unborn daughter with a medicine man that we were calling Tata. Now, at the time, I didn't know what Tata meant or even what it was. Well, it's an indigenous term for a tribal chief. Like with ayahuasca, you have a taita who's kind of like the lord of, not the lord, but the supporter of many, many villages, like in the highlands or in the Amazon too, I suppose. My tradition comes from Colombia, so I don't profess to know anything about other people's lineage. Just I'm good with mine. But anyway, it was referring to Patricio Dominguez. A lot of people know him from Spirit Molecule. A lot of Native people know him from his international organization of these tribal councils of elders. Hundreds of elders from around the world were brought together to speak in fulfillment of ancient native prophecies that the eagle and the condor, North America and South America, would come together once again. You see, our energetic lineage was disconnected with the conquest. A lot of things were interrupted. So I was lucky. I saw him in the dream. I was in a hotel in Rochester, minding my own business with my baby, my son, no daughter yet, and a book appears on the nightstand when I wake up from my nap with my son. I haven't unpacked my suitcase. I haven't done anything but lay down. I'm an exhausted mother of a newborn that never slept. I lay down for the love of God. I get some sleep and I wake up from another one of these weird dreams where I'm sitting here looking at this guy, Tata, right? And I open up the book that wasn't mine and there's his picture. That's what we call getting, what is it? Red pill, blue pill? Getting blue pilled is our term for when you have that moment where you're like, what am I going to do now? I'm dying. I'm losing my mind. My body's melting. I'm talking to an unborn child in the spirit world. Probably going to die here soon. What's it going to hurt me to open up this book? At this point, it's another thing that happens when you're dying. You're like, oh, I suddenly really don't care what people think about me anymore. Right?
And so you physically look, I'm just really glad that you're sitting here today and you're the body of health and you recovered from that precipice of death. But then when you began to recover health, you then followed this path that had started to be presented to you in the dreams.
I went to the medicine man. I looked at
How do
my child's father when
how
he
do you
got
go to
back
a
from his
medicine?
business meet. Huh?
How do you go to a medicine man?
I open up this book, The Mystery of the Crystal Skulls, and the guy
Right?
who I'm seeing the dream time that they were calling Tata, my kids, and a whole community of people who knew me, right? And I had been the founder of this church and this village, and we had done all of these things for sustainability, and
In the
that's
dream.
the dream time, right? Now I open the book and I'm thinking, how am I going to find this guy Tata? Because at a certain point, I'm like, I can't just keep having these dreams. I gotta focus on getting my health back. Well, it was the spirits trying to guide me to the medicine man. He helped me to heal. He taught me about peyote, about sweat lodge. It taught me about permaculture, tinctures, kombucha, which is what I'm drinking here, and how to create killer T cells in your body that would combat basically anything.
So I just want to connect the dots for our audience. When you say you met the medicine man, was this something you intuited or physically did you meet a medicine man?
I got bumped from my flight. We were on a business trip with my ex. I got bumped from my flight. He said, we don't have the money for you to go to Albuquerque. And plus, it's kind of weird. Courtney, I'm cutting you off. I mean, who could blame him, right? Um, and so I said, look, if I can find the money, do you mind if I just go? You know, if you can find the money, you go ahead and go. I got bumped from my flight, and then they gave me a voucher for my son getting bumped from the flight. So I got like $500 in spending money and a free round trip ticket. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico the next Monday. You bet I was,
So
to go
you
see the
knew
guy
you had
Dominguez.
this
I looked him up. Yeah.
okay. So that's the
Once I
gap in
had
the
his name, I found him very quickly.
so you showed up,
I called
not
first.
necessarily knowing what to expect. You just knew you irresistibly were drawn to the medicine man.
I'd been having a dream of an eco village that they were calling a world womb, for whatever that's worth. And it was an eco center where we had a template for like the antidote to what's wrong with society, which is that we miss each other, we love each other, we need each other, we need to have a more enriching life. And by doing sustainable agriculture collectively and with technology woven in there, like aquaponics, solar, wind, adobe, all of that good stuff. Everything was so cool at this eco village. It was like Arco Santi or something like that. It was wonderful. And I kept going back there in the dream time as I was dying. And so eventually I got to know him, and I got to know my unborn daughter, who's now here upstairs. And so that worked out. And and somehow I found his name in a book that hadn't been there. So for me, the veil was very thin at that point, and the spirits were truly, truly putting their hands into the physical plane, which is, I think, something that they don't usually do.
Well, clearly there was a calling on your life, and the near death experience made that veil especially thin. So you, because following your dream life and your quote unquote real life, I think we all have access, but we don't always tap in. And sometimes it does take those painful experiences for us to draw from. Is that what you would call the force?
I think I made it neutral because people took the word God, and I feel kind of put some schmutz on it. People all have these weird ideas of God now. We say great mystery. I like Lynn McTaggart. She talks about the field. You know, she's
Mm.
a scientific researcher who looks into consciousness. She's amazing. She has all of the data and the research on the force. But I like the force because it's playful, right? And we know it from the setting of all these heroes and these
Force
epic,
is with you, and the
yeah,
may the force be with you. And
Yoda's my man.
okay, you know what I love about you too is your sense of humor,
Thank
which,
you.
because this can be weighty stuff, and we don't want people to be afraid. We want people to be joyful about this discovery process. And today you serve in the world helping people find the force. So you briefly mentioned in the interview to date about plant medicine, ayahuasca. And one of the things that I don't think I've ever publicly revealed on my podcast or on any forum is my own experience. I went to a shaman in Costa Rica, and iboga is the plant medicine, which is an African root that showed me where I had disconnected from the outer Brenda and the inner Brenda, and gave me the vantage point to reconnect with myself. And that changed the whole trajectory of my life. So I am a believer in plant medicine as a tool, and I think it should be more normalized. And the reason I wanted to start with your educational background is I didn't want people to get to this part of the interview and dismiss you as
Thank
woo woo.
you.
You are a brilliant, educated scholar who had a near death experience that opened her eyes in a deeper way to that which is divine. And now you serve people in the world. How does plant medicine play into how you serve today?
Well, that healing journey that I had to go on to put my body back together meant going consciously back and forth into the spirit world and inviting more life force into the physical plane so as to heal myself. Um, it also meant learning about herbalism and plant allies. So I studied with Susan Weed. Then I again studied with Patricio and these other Indigenous elders about permaculture and herbalism, sustainability. No self respecting Native American true medicine person is going to authorize anyone to work with the highest level, like the postdoctoral level. Ayahuasca is postdoctoral. Okay. No one is authorizing a kindergartner to administer that medicine. And the rigors of what I went through in my training were more stressful and challenging than doing 2 degrees at the same time in 4 years easily. I
That's not
also
woo woo at all.
I am not joking. I'm not playing when I say that he had me not only picking up dog poo from his yard and doing all of his work like chop wood, carry water, because both of us are into Kung Fu. So he's from a Wing Chun tradition. I'm from a different Kung Fu tradition, more Shaolin. Um, but again, it's a very real thing. That's a really good crossover. Like traditional Kung Fu and Native American cosmology and shamanism are very similar. And it can be very ruthless. Like your teacher will hit you in the back of the head hard and say, you should have been looking. We're not playing here, you know? Because in the shamanic world, if you take people into the spirit world without being very strong yourself, you're putting their lives in danger. You're putting their well being at risk. So you took it very seriously.
So
And yeah.
let's talk about this, but because it has become more prevalent in pop culture to be discussing things like journeys, plant medicine, mushrooms, ayahuasca. Let me be clear, and I think you made it clear from the training you've had. I'm not saying that this is a recreational avenue. For me personally, everything I've ever done, and I've done more than Oboga, has been under the guidance of skilled therapists or shamans who have my safety and well-being in mind. And I think this is what you're underscoring. This is not playing.
Can be fun. It can be an enjoyable, but at the end of the day, finding the force is called what it is because it's a constant process. You know, when they talk about the Tao, it's not a thing, it's a process. It's that spinning between the yin and the yang that gets you into the Tao. And that's like the force. And it's like working with plant medicine, gung fu. Again, translation, work, comma, hard. Kung fu. That's all it means. Hard work. So this is work, but if you learn to enjoy work and you get, I call it when I'm joking around with the young kids I work with, I call it spiritually swole. You know, like the guys are like, yeah, I'm going to go to the gym and get swole. So I call it spiritually swole. You have to do this work. And so it's not that big of a deal. You know, when people practice their instrument, do they complain? When people
So,
paint, do they call it a pain in the neck? So if you
mm,
love spirituality and if you love this process, man, these medicines are like candy. But there's a lot of work involved in unblocking yourself from all of
mhm.
the rough edges, like taking off the excrescences of like a rock that you've taken from the quarry. You have to start polishing it. So perhaps the process of polishing ourselves, let's say, to be a stone fit to go into a community or a stone fit for like finding the force. Does that make sense? You have
Yeah.
to carve
And I
yourself. It could be difficult.
Right. And I also, full disclosure, I am an ultra cautious person. So even though I am the non-traditional plant medicine Aboga go to Costa Rica person, I'm also very cautious, but I'm also a spiritual seeker. So I think that there are a whole bunch of people out there who are in pain watching or listening, and they're looking for answers. And I don't ever proclaim to have the answer, but to offer opportunities where people may find their answer. And you serve in the world today how? Because the plant medicine is one component of what you do.
Um, Gosh, yeah, it is. One component of the Church of the Natural Law is a series of teachings and trainings called Finding the Force. And what that is essentially is this Native American medicine wheel. In here, we go into detail about it. There's a lot of science behind it. I mean, it turns out that if you're a carbon-based molecule, you have a strong magnetic field with 4 points, right? Because the carbon molecule. Then it's funny, you look at this thing here, compass. Oh, there's the 4 directions again. Oh, what I do is I train people with an interactive, immersive soundscape journey that's a lot like an ayahuasca journey. So I'm training people and building community based on the ancient traditions I was taught that I've translated so that it's accessible. Um, that's one thing in the community. And then at a distance, I'm working with more executives and thought leaders and just high performance people who need that extra edge. You know, if focus is the thing that I work on them with. And finding the force requires focus to dial in to these higher frequencies and to
Mhm.
also understand your inner terrain. So I train people in that.
The soundscape. I was exposed to just a little taste of it. Tell us about that experience and what does sound do? How does it penetrate?
Mm. Well, it's kind of the traditional native version of hypnosis. When you lay down a certain beat, Michael Harner, as an academic, discovered this similarity in people all over the world, and he brought it, um, to North America in kind of a mainstream white way, so to speak, that intellectuals can understand. That basically, when you're laying down a drum beat, about 1 beat per second, 55 to 60 beats per minute, boom, boom. And then we add an extra click, boom, 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 boom. And it's hypnotic. It takes over your brain waves. It penetrates your cells. It brings oxygenation. It brings all of these things. It also brings harmony because if you think about it, when these sounds are penetrating your body, they're tuning up every cell, every gene, every molecule is getting tuned up. It reminds me of Masaru Emoto's work. It's kind of that when you're looking at those beautiful water crystals that are aligned with the words love or thank you or gratitude, that's what these sounds are doing for our whole body physically. And I believe it opens up something into the energy world because that's how tribes journey who don't have plant medicine.
Ooh, that is so good. And you actually, people can engage you to bring this experience to them.
Yes, and I've even polished that up, kind of like my muscle car here, really tuned it up for New York to be sexy. This is a really high level area. I mean, what was I joking about before? You can't be anywhere close to New York and suck because you can't afford it. I mean, it's expensive. And in places like are you in San Francisco?
San Diego.
San Diego. See, I don't know California at all. It's mad expensive there too.
So you're dealing with a high performance crowd and you have tweaked your present. It's more than a presentation, it's an immersion.
It's an immersive soundscape, including um, native flute like this. Then we have native drums, like traditional rawhide drums. And we have this very special thing in the soundscape. It has this stand that it's on because it's
Oh my
actually
goodness.
two-sided. So that's what I'm struggling with is getting it off of its little stand.
What is it called?
This is a hang drum and it's tuned in a different key. And so are all my flutes. To A40, 432 instead of A440, which means it's creating a beautiful sound wave pattern. Like when you look at the water crystals where people are saying naughty things that I'm not going to repeat, then they turn into a blob, right? It's because the frequency. And so when you have a beautiful frequency, it replicates. It's like Mozart, like if something's truly genius and it's truly right, it easily replicates. So
Mm.
this guy or girl has 2 sides, is tuned up in a beautiful way. And all of these are in harmonics. So what I did is I went to the sound studio here in Long Island. The guy was amazing. God brought me, or whatever, the force took me to, or I followed the force to this guy who's a physics teacher, a sound engineer, and a music teacher, a sweet human being who understood all of it and helped me to layer all of these sounds together to take you on an adventure, a soundscape adventure around an island. Because why? Because native stories are the way that we teach. We teach by story. Why teach anywhere else? Like once you tell a person a story, you can hang a lot of things from that structure. If you take
Mm.
them on a journey, then all of a sudden they get to practice these skills that I'm teaching them. So I'm teaching them breath work. I'm teaching them the circuitry, the mudras, a little bit of tapping, and I'm really getting them into their bodies. And then we expose them to this music, and it's like riding in a celestial wave of sound. It's so much easier to journey when you have sound. It just elevates your spirit.
Mm. So it helps you transcend the monkey brain, which can often get in the way of, which is what the plant medicine did for me. It helped me bypass the brain and get right into a different realm. So, sound, if you're not exposed to plant medicine or even don't want to be, sound can help you make that connection. What a beautiful healing modality. I know that you are a founder of the Church of Natural Law. You are a speaker, you are a coach. I think at your heart, you are a healer.
Probably. And that's why they call us medicine people, because medicine is something that heals or connects you to your own ability to heal yourself, really.
Hmm.
That's what medicine people do. And that's why plant medicine is called plant medicine, because unlike most of the things that they have us taking nowadays, true
Mm,
medicine actually heals. And it also implies that it goes to the root of healing, that it's not something that just covers up symptoms. Does
mm.
that make sense too?
It does make sense to me. And one thing I did not understand before my own journey was that the medicine calls you.
Mm.
So it wasn't like, gee, I think I'm going to go do this. It literally started calling me a year before I went. And I resisted it at first because I was scared. I knew it was going to change me. And in turn, it was going to require changes. So I resisted it until I knew that it was where I needed to go and what I needed to do. Do you believe that the medicine calls people? Maybe there's, you know, 50 people listening to this right now, and of those 50, maybe 5 are saying, this is speaking to me. So the medicine you believe calls people.
Absolutely. And how do you know when it's calling you? How do you know when you're hungry, thirsty? How do you know when you had a good dream versus a scary dream? How do you know when something moves you? You feel it in your bones, right? And the ayahuasca, when she wants to work with you, she's not going to let go. That's why when people call me and they're like, well, do you think I should come to retreat? I go, no. If you don't know already, I'm not telling you yes. You need to know that that's what you want, because otherwise people think it's a magic wand, and then they get mad at me when they don't get the experience they want. Hey, it's not a buffet. This is a sacred plant medicine with cosmic consciousness, and people come here thinking it's like McDonald's buffet, and that they're going to get the order they wanted, or they'll send it back and have a tantrum. And Americans are so often rewarded for having tantrums in the business setting that happens a lot. So I turn away a lot of people, and I've learned to really dial into what you just said.
Because the people that are being called will find you.
And they seem to find me when they're the right person. I work
Mm.
with a lot of people who are very, very high level already in their area of expertise, because I can take them farther. They've already gotten to this level. they can taste the force. They can almost smell it, like a good Italian sauce. You can smell it from a street corner in Long Island.
You're
You know
talking
what
my
I'm saying?
language, Courtney. You're talking my language. That's such a great way of putting it. So, your mission is helping people find the force. What happens when people find the force? What's the outcome in their lives?
Oh, well, focus usually. When you find the force, you're able to open up your energy body. And this level of intelligence comes in. That's a quantum level of intelligence. I'm just going to put this drum down before I
Mhm.
drop it. It's a quantum level of intelligence. Heart Math has been doing research for years. I love these people. They make these little monitors, which make me look a lot less woo woo, because now we can take this little monitor and we can put this little clip on the ear and plug this into a computer and get a readout. When you use the meditation system that I teach people, and you get these 4 keys of power, and you're taking care of this whole thing that we actually are, you find the force, your energy completely shifts. You become a different level of being that's just completely different. It's a different order of being. The natives call it Homo luminoso. And Joe Dispenza talks about it. Dispenza talks about when you get your brain and your heart together, that it's like you become a receiver, just like our phones are a receiver for all of this information that's out there in frequency. Well, then we're able to dial in to whatever we want. Finding the force means you are conscious and you're lit up and you're choosing consciously in each moment, and you're in communication with something much higher, a higher order of intelligence. I mean, quantum intelligence. If it knows everything, you go, hey, I'd like to find a red dress at Marshall's for like $50. I want it to be designer. I need a pair of heels. I swear to God, I can even do stuff like that. And you walk in and there's the dress on the rack and it fits perfectly. Oh, it's got a little tear. I know how to sew. Don't worry about it. I mean, things like that, like it just, and I'm making a silly analogy that anyone can understand about looking for a dress and having that synchronicity happen, right? But what the force does is it gives you like that golden trail of pellets, like nuggets, that takes you along the right path to lead you to your highest destiny. And it makes all kinds of things so much simpler. Am I making sense? Sometimes when I
Oh,
say
oh
stuff,
no,
I
no,
think
no.
it
You
sounds
know,
weird.
and I want you to stop saying that, because for those who have ears to hear, they're hearing it. And
Yeah.
I'm just connecting dots in my head because I personally have had an impasse, and maybe you can help me and help all of our viewers and listeners too. There was a period of time when I was very much a devotee of Abraham Hicks. And I'm not saying I don't listen, because I do still listen to the collective teachings about law of attraction and creating your own reality. Okay. And then the you know what hit the fan and my life fell apart. And it's like, I created that. No, thank you. And there's got to be some balance between this magical view of life and the pain we all go through. And I still am wrestling with that. You got anything to add to that or wisdom you want to
Yeah.
drop on?
That was one of the first things I think that you and I connected on. That's why I was like, hey, we're BFFs. Just that point there is loving Abraham Hicks and yet knowing you can keep on going to the next highest flying disc. There's the part about where she says, step into the vortex of power. She says that a lot, but she doesn't say how. So, in response to that question myself, I developed the 4 keys, because you need 4 legs on that table to get to the next highest flying disc. Okay. It's like the floor and the table. What does the table have? It has 4 feet. And when you have those 4 on the floor, then you can level up. And then you put 4 on the floor again, and then you level up. And you keep on leveling up until you don't get messed up in the same type of silliness that I still get messed up in my own head. Don't worry, it never ends, but it gets less and less. It starts approaching, you can half it, is what I say. It's one of those things like you'll never get all the way to zero if you're going by half, by half, by half. So it's a process. And then there's the other part about understanding that bad things happen to good people sometimes. There's no avoiding that. And to say that you manifested it is like blaming the victim. And that
Mm,
irritates the heck out of me. I would never tell my client, oh, look at what you manifested. I want to punch someone in their face every time they say that to me.
mm.
I'm like, you don't say that to people. So I find a lot of that very insulting when people who have manifested this wonderful reality look at you and go, oh, look at what you manifested. Look at what I manifested. Now, there are a lot of things that go into people having good fortune. Some of it's luck, some of it's privilege, some of it is luck, some of it is hard work. If you put in the hard work, you're always going to get better. And it's peeling back these layers all the time. And like you always say, finding the silver lining, right?
I think you just spoke to that issue I've been wrestling with so beautifully
Except for
because
punching people in the face.
that's all right.
Brenda's not representing that. Her opinions are
Listen,
not represented by the violent shaman.
I had a very good therapist say there is such a thing as toxic positivity and toxic belief that you are creating your own reality. So everything is in balance and nothing gives us a hall pass from pain because pain is so often the very catalyst needed to expand this universe, to expand our lives, to create space for more love and more empathy. I became a better person because of my pain, because all of a sudden it wasn't just get happy, everybody. It was from a real place. I always say I can't give it if I don't live it. And you are evidence of someone living what you give. How does it play out in everyday life beyond the red dress at Marshall's?
That's a hot little red dress too, by the way. I was thinking about wearing it tonight, but it's too cold. Um, anyway, how does that play out in everyday life? Um, gosh, I let myself cry when I need to cry. I let myself lay in bed when I need to. I go to the gym as much as possible and do my yoga. I remind myself to breathe because all the different traditions talk about the breath as being the force of God or chi or prana, whatever it is. I walk my talk. So the meditation that I teach my, high-end clients, I do every day at least 5 times because this monitor, when you use it, it tells you that it's it's the often thing is better than an hour a week is 5 minutes 3 times a day. It's also realistic for the modern woman, I think, and anyone in corporate America. You can sit at your desk and do a 5 minute meditation and you can retrain your mind. So my elder said, because we're native and we think about these tangible kind of examples, and he talks about when you make a fabric and you dye it, you dip it multiple times. See, I'm holding all of my stuff now. You dip it multiple times. You put it in the indigo dye, for example, and then you take it out and you put it in the sun. And it's not the purple that you want right away. So you dip it again. And that the human mind is like that. And our data now on neural networks and neural plasticity says that that's the case. That when we repeat a new habit often, it has a bigger impact on our neurons.
I'm smiling because I'm thinking I got to interview you before what you do explodes. And I can say, I talked to her at the very beginning because I know that what you have to offer is so unique and special and magical and practical and scientific and divine, all wrapped together in a package that is a person who went through pain and came out the other side. Any closing words for, oh, wait, how do people find you? How can people find you, work with you, consult with you, engage you?
Oh, well, so findingtheforce.com is the more corporate facing New Yorky opportunity for coaching one-on-one. And I can do distance medicine with people, and I can do microdosing, and we can make huge impacts in people's lives from their living room. Thank God for Zoom. And we can do one-on-one trainings. So if you have an organization of people who are of service, especially, or people who are at risk for, PTSD, and they have a difficult job, it's also a wonderful way, to bring people together. Like I'm doing tonight. I'm taking 50 people tonight, and I'm taking them on this journey. And then they'll get a heart math monitor for their group. And then they'll be able to monitor how people are doing and see depression, anxiety, fatigue goes down by 50% in the first 30 days when you do a meditation like this several times a day. And production, focus, and genius, creativity, aha moments goes up by 40% in the first 30 days. When you have people doing it together, it's a whole nother thing, because now we're all at one with this force, and that exponentially multiplies the power of your group. So that's what I'm really excited about, and about the playful part of it. Anyway, I went off on a tangent. So you can find me on Find the Force for that. Church of the Natural Law is our psychedelic church. The kids wanted it to be more playful in 70s, so I had it redone. It looks like an old James Bond movie with the bubbles and all of the swirls. It's pretty cool.
So findingtheforce.com, Church of the Natural Law, Courtney Starheart. Any final words for our audience? Because people drawn to this podcast may be those going through a dark time, and they want hope to get through that dark time, encouragement to keep going. Any final words for our audience?
You are your best medicine. You just have to find it. You have to find that nugget. And we often say that poison and pain is power once you transform it. And I have a process that the ancients have used for thousands of years. Thank God, or I would be dead. I wouldn't be alive if I hadn't been given this process. You can apply it to anything. You can apply it to feng shui. You can apply it to business, to corporate, to anything. But when you apply it to spirituality, you can truly see things from the higher perspective about why you're going through, how you can benefit from, and how you can ultimately be okay with the pain as being part of a cathartic process, like you say. It's como una cáscara. The nuts have a shell, a hard shell on the outside. And as that green part is pushing through up to the sun and the roots are going down, that shell must feel like it's breaking. But that shell on nuts is often toxic. It puts out toxins. It's warfare. It's a barrier to protect what's truly inside, which is the plant.
Ooh.
And that's us sprouting like a lotus or like a tree of flower. But you have to break through.
And if you keep pressing, you will break through. And that's how I end every podcast, saying if you are in a dark place, you're in a chrysalis, keep pressing. You are creating strength in your wings so you can fly. Thank you for tuning in. And thank you, Courtney Starheart. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. So grateful.